There's something sitting on almost every senior's dinner plate tonight that's quietly working against their heart. And it's not what you'd expect. It's not the salt. It's not red meat. It's not even sugar, at least not the kind you'd think to blame. It's rice. Plain rice. Now stay with me here, because this isn't about giving up rice. If that's what you were bracing for, relax. This is about what's missing from the bowl, not what's wrong with it. Here's what nobody tells you about a plain bowl of rice. Your body has almost nothing to slow it down. No fiber standing in the way. No fat to buffer it. So it moves through you fast, faster than most people realize, and it hits your bloodstream in a rush. That rush isn't a one-time thing. If rice shows up on your plate a few nights a week, that rush becomes a pattern, and your heart is the one keeping score, quietly, meal after meal, long before anything shows up on a routine checkup. You might already know this feeling without having a name for it. A heaviness after dinner that pulls you straight to the couch. Cold hands you rub together out of habit more than cold weather. An afternoon fog that rolls in no matter how well you slept. Those aren't just getting older. They're often just your body telling you it's tired of riding that same sugar wave dinner after dinner. Here's why this hits differently after 60 than it did at 40. Your body used to handle a sugar rush with a fast, efficient insulin response. Sugar in, insulin out. Blood sugar back to normal within the hour. No real consequence to your vessels along the way. That response slows down with age, the same way reflexes slow down, the same way recovery from a long walk takes a little longer than it used to. So that sugar sits in your bloodstream longer than it used to. It has more time to do what sugar does to soft tissue when it lingers. Bind to it, stiffen it, wear it down a little at a time. Nobody decided this was going to happen. It's just what quietly shifts, year by year, unless something steps in to slow the process back down. Here's the part that actually surprised me when I started looking into this. There's a fix for it, a real one, not a pill, not something from a pharmacy, something you've probably walked past in a grocery store 100 times without a second thought. It's a seed. One spoonful stirred right into your rice, and the whole picture changes. If you've already started adding in things like watercress, beetroot, or walnuts, because of what we talked about in an earlier video, this fits right alongside that. One more small piece stacking on top of the work you've already started. And if you haven't seen that one yet, stick around, because I'll point you to it before we're done here. But before I tell you which one, I want you to understand why it works, because the why is what makes people actually stick with it. There are 3 things this seed does to your body, and I want to walk you through them in order, because each one sets up the next. Stay with me until the 3rd, because that's the one that explains why this actually works, not just that it does. Let's start with number 3, because on its own, this one already sounds almost too simple to matter. This seed is loaded with compounds called lignans, hundreds of times more than almost any other food you'll find, anywhere, in any grocery store. Here's what most people don't realize about cholesterol after 60. Cholesterol itself isn't really the enemy. It's what happens when it gets damaged by stress and inflammation, turns sticky, and clings to your vessel walls like rust building up inside a pipe that's never been cleaned. Lignans catch that damaged cholesterol early, before it ever gets the chance to stick to anything. And this isn't a small effect tucked away in one obscure study either. Researchers who've looked specifically at older adults adding ground flaxseed to their daily meals have tracked real movement in cholesterol markers over a matter of months. Not a dramatic swing, but a steady, reliable one, the kind that adds up the longer someone sticks with it. Good start, but here's the catch nobody mentions. Cleaning up your cholesterol barely matters if the walls of your blood vessels are already inflamed and irritated to begin with. You're polishing something that's already cracked underneath, which is exactly the problem number 2 was built to solve. Number 2 is where things get a little more interesting, because this is the one that actually touches the irritation itself, not just what's floating past it. This seed carries a plant-based omega-3, the same family of fat your doctors probably mentioned if you've ever talked about fish oil, except this one comes from a seed sitting quietly in your pantry, not a fish counter. Your heart uses it directly. It acts almost like a moisturizer for the lining of your blood vessels, calming inflammation and signaling those vessels to relax and widen instead of staying tight and constricted the way they've been for years. This is also where a lot of the cold hands, the heavy legs, the general feeling of circulation that's just a little sluggish comes from. Vessels that have lost some of their natural give. Omega-3s don't force that flexibility back overnight, but they feed the exact tissue responsible for it, meal after meal, the same steady way muscle rebuilds itself after regular movement instead of one hard workout. Now, cleaner cholesterol, calmer vessels, 2 real wins, and either one on its own would be worth the effort. But neither one of them touches the actual moment the damage happens in the first place. That's reserved entirely for number 1. And once you understand this last one, the first 2 will make a lot more sense, because this is the one they were both quietly working to protect. Number 1 is a break, a literal break on the sugar spike before it ever reaches your bloodstream. This comes down to a kind of fiber unique to this seed, one that turns almost gel-like the moment it meets warm rice, coating the starch completely, grain by grain. That gel acts like a speed bump in your stomach. Instead of rice starch flooding your bloodstream all at once, it releases slowly over hours, the way a slow drip waters a garden, instead of a flash flood drowning it. No spike, no sticky sugar residue attacking the vessel walls we just talked about protecting. Just steady, gentle energy and a heart that finally isn't working overtime after dinner. I'm Dr. Natalie Brooks, and after years spent studying how everyday food choices affect the aging cardiovascular system, this is one of the simplest, most consistently effective changes I've come across, and it takes less than 10 seconds to do. What keeps bringing me back to it isn't just the mechanism, it's how little it asks of you. No new grocery trips across town. No giving up a meal you actually enjoy. Just one small addition to something already sitting on your table most nights of the week. The seed is ground flaxseed, specifically ground, not whole. Whole flaxseed mostly passes right through you without breaking down at all, shell intact, benefits locked inside and never released, no matter how much of it you eat. If you've ever eaten whole flaxseed and wondered why nothing seemed to change, that's usually why. So here's how you actually use it, because the details genuinely make the difference between this working and not working at all. Buy it ground, or grind it yourself in a small coffee or spice grinder once a week. Either way, keep it in the fridge, sealed in a dark, airtight container. Flaxseed's healthy oils break down fast once they're exposed to air and light, and ground flaxseed left out on the counter can turn rancid within days. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day is where the research consistently lands. Stir it into your rice while it's still warm, right after fluffing it with a fork. The warmth is what activates that gel-forming fiber, and it adds a light, nutty flavor without making anything gritty or dry. If you're new to extra fiber, ease into it. Start with a single teaspoon for the first 3 or 4 days. Then work your way up toward a full tablespoon, and eventually 2, over the following couple of weeks. Adding a lot of fiber all at once can cause some bloating or an upset stomach, especially if you're not used to it. And that's the single most common reason people quit something that would have otherwise worked for them. Slow and steady avoids that completely. And make sure you're drinking a little extra water on the days you have it, since fiber needs water to do its job properly without leaving you feeling backed up. It works in more than just rice if you want variety. Stir it into warm oatmeal in the morning. Blend it into a smoothie. Sprinkle it over yogurt. The gel-forming effect works the same way in each of those. So if rice isn't on your plate every night, you're not missing out on any of this. A quick note on quality, because not all flaxseed on a shelf is equal. Golden flaxseed and brown flaxseed work the same way nutritionally. The color doesn't matter, so don't feel like you need to hunt down one over the other. What matters more is freshness. If it smells faintly bitter or like old paint when you open the bag, it's already turned and won't do much for you. Flaxseed that's still fresh smells mild and slightly nutty, almost nothing at all. When in doubt, buy a smaller bag more often rather than one large bag that sits open for months. And if you live alone and cooking for one sometimes means smaller portions of everything, this habit scales down just as easily. A single tablespoon into a single small bowl of rice does exactly the same job as 2 tablespoons into a family-sized pot. This isn't a habit that requires cooking for a crowd or planning ahead. It's a 10-second addition to whatever you were already making for yourself tonight. And give it time, because this isn't a same-day transformation. The blood sugar effect starts working meal by meal. Almost right away, you may notice you feel less heavy and sluggish after dinner within the first week or 2. But the deeper changes, the blood pressure and cholesterol shifts, take weeks of doing this daily before they show up in any meaningful way. Not once, daily. This is the same pattern seniors have seen with other small, consistent additions, like the ones from that watercress, beetroot, and walnut habit that quietly rebuilds heart health from a different angle entirely. The two work well together, not against each other, because they're targeting the same goal from different directions. It helps to think of this less like a treatment and more like a habit you're quietly building, the same way you'd rebuild strength in a muscle you hadn't used in a while. Nobody expects one walk to undo years of sitting. The same patience applies here. Some weeks you might forget a day or 2, and that's fine. This isn't about perfect streaks. It's about the pattern winning out over time. Missing a Tuesday doesn't erase what Monday and Wednesday did. What matters is that most days, most weeks, this becomes something you just do without having to think about it anymore. The same way you don't think twice before reaching for salt or pepper. Comment your age and where you're watching from. I like knowing who's actually out there making this change. It genuinely helps me know who I'm talking to, and it helps other people watching see that they're not the only ones starting this tonight. A few things people ask me about this, so let me cover them now instead of leaving you to wonder. Can you use brown rice instead of white? Yes, and if you already eat brown rice, this stacks with the fiber you're already getting rather than replacing it. Does it matter what time of day you eat it? Not especially. The fiber does its job whenever the rice is eaten, though many people find it easiest to build the habit around whichever meal includes rice most consistently. And if you're on blood-thinning medication, flaxseed's omega-3 content is generally considered safe in food-level amounts, but it's worth a quick mention to your doctor or pharmacist, just so it's on their radar, the same way you'd mention any other regular dietary change. What if you don't eat rice much at all? None of this depends on rice specifically. Rice is just the common thread for a lot of people's dinners, and it happens to be a food this fiber works especially well with because of how the gel forms around warm starch. If pasta or potatoes show up on your plate more often, the same tablespoon stirred in while they're still warm does essentially the same job. And if you're wondering whether flaxseed oil in a bottle could replace the ground seed, it can't. Not for this. The oil carries the omega-3s, but it's the ground seed's fiber that creates that gel and slows the sugar spike down. You'd be getting one benefit and missing the one that matters most here. Plain rice was never the problem. It was just missing one thing. And that one thing has been sitting in the grocery store the whole time, waiting for someone to tell you it mattered. If you found this useful, send it to someone who still eats their rice plain every night. A spouse, a parent, a friend you talk to most days. It's a small thing to share, and it might be exactly the nudge they need. And if you want 3 more forgotten foods working the same way for your heart, foods our grandmothers relied on long before any of this became a science headline, go watch that video next. It picks up right where this one leaves off, and together, these 2 small habits are worth more than either one on its own.